other people. So we're recording. So I have to do our best not to swear or anything offensive. On the screen, you'll see what we're hoping to cover today. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the future student-led enterprise, and linking that up to some of the conversations we've been having about what student unions look like in 2034. We'll talk a bit about the definition of social enterprise and what's going on in the world of social enterprise, focusing mostly on the UK. Then we're going to kind of change it up and talk to you more about what enterprise looks like in student unions currently and what it can look like in the future, including social enterprise as a learning destination. And we've got a few examples of some good stuff that's happening in student unions at the moment. And then at the end, we'll talk to you about some next steps that you can take to start engaging with this work today. There's also, we've allowed about 5 to 10 minutes at the end for any questions. So any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat, and we'll answer them during the webinar. If we can't answer it in the main section, then we'll do that at the end. And if it's that Tom and I don't know the answer to, then we will go away and do some research and find out for you. And we'll send out a summary of any questions like that afterwards to your email addresses. So we will aim to finish at 2:30, so that you go on and carry on with your jobs. So let's crack on. So, then I'm going to hand over to Tom. We've been doing a big piece of work at NUS at the future of student unions and what a student union looks like in 2034. And this is all linked to about the 1994 Education Act and what that did to student unions, and thinking about, we've been consulting with lots of different organisations, so talking to student unions, of course, but we've also been talking to different sector partners, volunteering organisations, funding boards. We've been talking to people in government about what they think student unions are doing now and what they think student unions should be doing in 2034. Lots of this is around questioning what we do now and how we do it, and is it the right way to do things, and we can look forward in a visionary way and think about how we can change our student unions for the better and make them even more amazing than they currently are. Tom's written an article about that and about how this links with enterprise stuff, which we'll send out to you afterwards. So Tom, I want to kind of talk us through where your thinking is with this.
Yeah, so I was asked to look at sort of my vision of 2034 and where our student unions are being and where I'd hope them to be. And the thing I did is look at the things that I think I'll be worrying about, and they look quite operational. So they're the typical things that I just think we'll never get rid of, but these are the nice things to worry about, and that's things like our freshers' fair. Have we got tables for externals? Are we following the risk assessment, and if it's going to rain? And also when my hoverboard is locked up. I have a big assumption there that I'll still be working in student unions in 2034, which I hope I am. That obviously I love it. But what really was looking at is the things that we can't change, but there are some things that we definitely own and we can definitely move towards. So on the next slide, I've looked at the future that I want. Another assumption is that I've that lots of other people buy into this. So what I really value is students are firmly established as partners in their education, and that is, I think, core to what we need to do as student unions, and that's core to being a strong, effective student unions, is that students aren't viewed as customers or clients. They're not consumers of education, but they're partners. Effectively, they can feed into their courses and shape them, but also into their student activities and opportunities, which all of us are delivering across the country. I see the higher education sector taking seriously its responsibility to serve the wider public good, that civic-minded organisations, and asking that sort of fundamental question is, why do unions exist and what we're here for? Well, I'd like to think in 2034 that we're here to develop students, and I think we're here in 2015, we're here to try and develop students that are able to, when they graduate, make a positive impact on society. I think that's kind of the the vision of what we should be and what we should be doing. And in 2034, I hope that's firmly established, and that student unions aren't just acting in a bubble or in a silo, but we're working with other civic organisations, and we're viewed as a destination or a hub in our community to really develop students and people, institutions, thus able to make those positive impacts. So that's something core to what I see us being doing in 2034. And I think being nice as the leaders, able to function our society, add value, concentration, sustainable responsibility. I think people are already doing that, but I think hopefully in 2034 this is being done by everyone, and everyone's bought into it, and it's just recognised that it's an important thing that we do. And I also see students being change agents. So students come to us, they know what a student union is, they know what we do. When they leave school, they've already engaged in some sort of partnership in their education. They've already started doing things which positively impact society. And I like to think that when they come to their students' union, they already know how to engage, and they already know what they can achieve with us. Prepared to enable them to do that. So that's my future vision. From that, I tried to look at how we do that. There's lots of things that need to happen. Vision's stretch, it's ambitious, but I think it's something that we can definitely achieve. And way of doing that is through social enterprise, which I firmly believe. There are some people who are on the day who are actually delivering social enterprise programs in the union, and I'm all bought into the power social enterprise has. But definitely embracing social enterprise is just one way of getting students to be, and I've listed it there, able to be more civic-minded, socially conscious, global focused, and sustainability literate. And we're going to go through some examples that are already being done and that we can sort of do with social enterprise, and look at some ways of embedding social enterprise into organisations, and that would really be one way that we achieve our 2034 vision. That's the focus of the webinar today.
Yeah, today we're going to be focusing on some kind of big ideas and different ways of thinking about this, and different ways of thinking about our student unions. So social enterprise is at the heart. So I think to do that, what would be really helpful is to come up with some kind of definition of social enterprise, working out into what we're talking about today. What do we mean?
So I think what's important is the definition can be quite ambiguous, but if you drill it down, you can, and I have previously got bogged down with what a definition of social enterprise is and had some quite interesting conversations with academics at institutions. But in a enterprise, and I've written it there for you, is really a business driven by a social aim or social purpose, goods or services, but the social purpose at its core. So when the social enterprise profits, society should profit too. And there are really, really good examples. So the big issue is kind of the standard example that if you're ever telling a student about it, that's the one you point to. It's really visual. Everyone knows about it. What they do is they work to alleviate homeless issues in the UK, and through they created a product, which is the magazine, which is sold by people who are experiencing homeless difficulties. And now the profits then reinvested back into projects which alleviate that core value, which is trying to solve or help people who are in that predicament. So the big example, another example is 15, which is Jamie Oller's restaurant, which is all about youth employability. So he takes sort of unemployed young people, he gives them a job in his restaurants, and those restaurants all pumped back into that restaurant and making it bigger and better, and also goes into some employability initiatives for other young people. So that's great, and they're all over the country, and it's a really good project. Really good examples. Some of you give me TAP, set up by I'm not sure, Manchester Met or a Manchester Uni graduate. Not really to me, but I think those institutions would care about this. But they basically give me TAP. Send out the details of this. And Roehampton, I know, are doing some work with that project. But Give Me Tap is a social enterprise looking at alleviating sort of problems in Africa. So enabling access to clean water for people in those countries. that they started to work with. I think he's partnered with Water actually. You can do a quick Google and you can find out more details. And basically, Give Me Tap, the customer would buy a bottle with Give Me Tap on it and go to selected cafes and restaurants and fill those water bottles up for free. So it encourages people to drink more water, which is great, but all the profit from those sale of those water bottles gets put back into the social enterprise and gets put back into projects on the ground in Africa. It's brilliant, a really good example. There are loads of examples that you can go and find which are interesting and engaging. Claire from Sheffield Hallam she point to a number of examples where they supported student businesses or social enterprises, I should say, and good things. Gloucester's got some great examples of social enterprises that have come out of it. So some really good examples of close to home in our unions doing really good stuff. And then we can look at student unions did have the hallmarks of a social enterprise. Well, I think most of us would identify with that definition. It has that social purpose, which is to enhance students' lives at its core. And most unions will have some form of commercial arm, bar or selling advertising, etc., which generates some form of profit, and that put back into membership services to enable students to live a better life. So whether that's campaigning or student activities, yeah, most unions will identify with that definition.
I think that's helpful to give people an idea of what we mean by social enterprise, and I think actually a lot of things that students' unions really do fit with that model, which is really cool. We're going to give you a bit of context about what's going on in the UK. So in 2003, the annual survey of small businesses says that there was around 5,000 social enterprises in the UK. 2010, this figure was more like 60,000. So according to them, there's been massive growth. And we've got another stat on there from NCVO, which says that in 2003, there was a number of social enterprises in the UK, and that was 180,000. So they don't all match up.
No, what's really important is to recognise that there's a debate around the numbers of social enterprises in the UK, and that stems from it's really hard to define what social enterprise is. So when or not it's a social enterprise, if individuals profit from or they take a salary, there's some real sort of interesting debate, which again you can Google and find out. I think the University of Birmingham academics have looked into it, and they've said it's really difficult to pin that figure down. So you can get caught up in that debate, but what I've experienced is not really worry about the number like that, and just sort of by the fact that social enterprises are good and they're doing a positive thing, and there's wider momentum in society, in the world, to change the way people do business. Instead of focusing on profit, people are focusing on people.
Yeah.
And you just look at fair trade sales in the UK, they're up in the last year by about 13%, which illustrates that people are valuing, 14%, really valuing the impact of social enterprise. And I'm stealing some of your slides here, Rosie.
It's fine, yeah. So what this slide is showing, that although the slide before, so we've got these numbers, there is some growth. There's definitely some growth, but we don't know exactly what that growth is because of the definition stuff. But this slide is showing is that even though perhaps we don't know necessarily what that exact growth is, there's an increase in interest in this area. People are more interested in ethical products. The students coming from student unions are much more ethically focused. We've done some research with the Higher Education Academy that says that 80% of students want to learn about sustainability and have an interest in sustainability. That's bigger than it's ever been before. So what we're saying here is we're kind of giving you more reason to do this stuff. There's a huge momentum behind ethical business and social enterprise, and student unions should embrace this. Just popping back to the slide before, at the bottom there, we've just referenced Lord Young's report for the Department of Business Innovation and Skills, often called BIS. So released just last summer, and it talks about the fact that we need to teach more young people vital enterprise skills, and it's a really important report. Yeah,
I'd recommend that if you haven't read it already, that you Google.
We can reference it.
We can send it out, and you have a read of that. It's relatively long, but it's recommendations for what education or educators should be delivering, and that's through the spectrum. So it's from, I think it's from primary age all the way to higher education. So it's really interesting, even if you're just interested in enterprise education, but it's very relevant to us as practitioners as well.
Include that in the follow-up that we send to you, so that you can, for those of you that enjoy those thoughts, you can have a look at that. So we've given you some interesting context, and we've talked to you about some visionary stuff about where student unions might be in 2034. What we're going to talk to you now about is a few more examples of stuff that's happening in student unions, and talk about where this fits in student unions and why it's important. So handing over to Tom. Yeah,
so I think what we've demonstrated is that entrepreneurialism or enterprise skills is really important to students. And Lord Young's report demonstrates that it's important to the government as well, and that we're teaching students about enterprise skills. The language can be problematic, especially from student unions' point of view. We've looked at how the definition can be problematic in terms of numbers and things, but the language around entrepreneur can often be disenfranchising to some people. They often coin images of Alan Sugar firing people, or Richard Branson, or profit and that sort of thing, when actually these skills include enterprise. It's a core life skill. I see enterprise as being a skill which is not really to do with spreadsheets and business forecasting, but really it's a skill where someone who can get off their backside and make things happen. And that's, I think, what we need to redefine that word as. I think that's really important as unions, that we make it's sort of in marketing materials, and we try and encourage people to get involved in enterprise initiatives, that we include that sort of redefined definition in it. This is just a law, and it's something that's really important for you to sort of learn and also demonstrate to other people that you can do it, and it will also benefit you massively in a lot of ways. That's really important in terms of us delivering our activities around enterprise. And once you recognise this, and they recognise that it's important, it's really up to you and how you do it. I think context is really important. What works at Sheffield Hallam won't necessarily work at Gloucestershire University, works at Gloucester University won't necessarily work in Westminster. And I've seen that hand. It's very contextual, and it's very based on the demographic student you have, and relationship with your institution, and things like that. Moving on to the next slide, we start talking about social enterprise and student unions, and touched upon unions have been delivering social enterprise, or a form of social enterprise, or the ethos, in our commercial service models for a number of years, which is great. But I think I can go further. I think it's up to union sort of staff and officers and students how we do that. And I think it's going to be a universal decision from the student movement how we do it. But I think, again, it will be that contextual thing.
Hand up there, yeah. and say that, like, part of us establishing an enterprise network, and part of us putting our energy into this conference that we'll talk about at the end, is about NUS not telling you how to do it, and not giving you just one way of doing this. It's about giving you knowledge, which is the start of that today, and giving you access to the right contacts, and bringing people who are good at this stuff from outside of students' unions into the movement to give all more knowledge, and to give us ideas. But it certainly isn't around us telling you a one way of doing it, because there isn't one way of doing it.
Definitely not. And yet, touching upon external sort of providers and things, Unlimited, who someone has mentioned that they're working with, an intern from Unlimited. There's organisations outside of our movement and outside our sector who are absolute experts, and they're the sort of people we want to bring in and start talking to them. They do some fantastic work of social enterprise. So, upon why social enterprise is good in unions. So, first thing, and maybe the most important thing, is they can provide practical learning destinations. So, university is a really good example, and the Cheltenham Chili Company, which you might have seen, they can provide a vehicle for students to get involved with their opportunities and activities, allow them to learn different employability skills. So that's important, and then that has alongside the backdrop of a social enterprise. So when involved in engaging with a social enterprise, they learn about that social aim. Really important, so they can be a good vehicle for developing skills. So that's number one, why they can be really good, and be more than just that service that we offer. And that touched upon developing civic-minded, socially conscious sort of graduates and students involved in it, enables them to just, I'm doing some marketing research for this social enterprise. I'm doing marketing research for so what I say is that them encompasses the aims and the ethos of that social enterprise. So that's really important, and I've seen that firsthand of how it works. Really important. They lead new enterprise or manage existing ones. So touch on the Chat and Chili company. Other things when they can innovate and develop a new social enterprise. So Gloucester is another good example of where students have come to us with business ideas, and we've supported and developed them to become social enterprises, things that they never considered or even were aware of before. So that can be a good thing that we can do to students. And the enterprise skills. So all the time they're learning about enterprise skills and sustainability skills. So that's why they can be good. So examples then. Sheffield Hallam. I'm not just going to talk about Gloucestershire. So Sheffield Hallam, their project is called, and correct me if I'm wrong, Claire, Innovation Award. So basically students can come and pitch for money to support them in starting up a social enterprise, which is really, really good. And there's some really good examples of students talking about what they've done, which is really interesting. I touched upon Gloucestershire, and they've also offered financing to social enterprise startups as well. And there are good organisations that can do that, and Unlimited is one where students pitch for money, try awards, where they can have a go and they can covered in terms of transport to different events and things, where they can just search, or they can give them money to actually start up and try out their new business venture.
I think there's a good opportunity in students' unions that I was just looking on Twitter last night that Liverpool are having their society's funding more like pitching for funds, and which is a really interesting way of bringing in a film, which is really useful for the future into something that you already do, that you already usually give grant funding to your clubs and societies, so why not get them to put together a business case about that?
Yeah, I think some things it's about refining and using different language. So we could look at sports club societies as mini enterprises. They are technically developing, delivering employability skill opportunities for students, and why can't they come and pitch for money instead of filling out a form and filling out lots of paper? Why can't they come and pitch at the start of the year, and they'll get more out of it than just filling in a form? I mean, take time to implement and embed in your organisation. So it's also about being aware of your context. So Westminster, it would take a little bit of time for us to change that model, get students on board with it, but maybe at other unions you're more ready to sort of implement that. So moving on to this slide then, it's looking at sort of some can be put off by the risk of failure of doing something new, but if the support network is there for them and it's accessible, they're doing those ideas. And so one of the main sort of barriers is that of failure. So it's about having unions that can support, encourage students, and almost give that sort of support and ideas and learning and that safe environment which we're very good at. And if we take the social enterprise, that's really good. And ethical business and putting stuff into practice is all important, and that's what examples the Chat and Chili company can give us. But it's looking at how we can replicate it and make it bigger. I mean, I have the answer to that, and again, that's the conversation we need to start having if we achieve that 2034 vision.
Tom, could you talk us through really briefly? I know you're not at Gloucester anymore, but could you just talk us through the Chat and Chili company? Because I know that you did a session on this at Students' Unions conference last year, and it was really interesting just to learn about where that came from. Yeah,
so that was a really great project, and it started from something very, very small, and into something that engaged students and upskilled them and got a lot of buy-in from a lot of people. So it came from a really small idea, and it was very by green impact, but a lot to do with enterprise and culture in the union, ideas, and not being afraid to do new things, and that sort of league-averse culture when it comes to doing new things in student activities. So a bit of we weren't really a union that was renowned for doing employability initiatives. So students really saw us as a union that had a bar, and that's pretty much their engagement. That's where it kind of stopped. We wanted to change that. Students had told us in a survey that they wanted more opportunities where they could develop their employability. So it was in that sort of context of what else can we do? And we did innovation exercise as a senior management team, and we did all the sort of things and that we had as a union. So we listed things from, I don't know, I had a keyboard, we had a plot of land with a greenhouse on it, all sort of things we listed. Went through them all and we said, do they spend any money or do they benefit students? And it was a no on both counts. Do we need to do something with it? And this plot of land with the greenhouse, it didn't cost any money, it wasn't used, and it didn't really benefit students at all. We decided to use something with that, and then impact excellence projects came along. We've been successful in previous years. Combine that empty space with this new project, and where the idea came from is that students were increasingly engaging with foods on our Freshers Fair events. So organisations like Nando's would come in, and students would sort of flock around that particular stand at the fair. So we kind of had a gap, and we thought we'd fill it with a social enterprise that grew these and used sort of hot food products. So we started doing chili chutney, and then we started doing chili sauce. So we used this greenhouse to sort of grow chilies and then make products from them, and then put all the profits back into the social enterprise. Social ethos, or the aim, was to get students learning how it's produced and learning about sort of local growing products and reducing food miles and all that sort of business. Great. The main sort of advantage of doing this activity was, number one, it enabled members of staff who were meant to be responsible for lots of things. So as a member of staff, they're responsible for delivering sustainability initiatives, enterprise initiatives, and mobility initiatives. This social enterprise allowed me to combine all these initiatives into one project. Very good from my view, but it also enabled us to create employability opportunities for students through them. So, branding, which you can see on the slide, a student designed that, and that's now all over our products. We needed market research done, which students did. We needed marketing plan, which students did. So just the very nature of a social enterprise created lots of opportunities that we are allowed and enabled to engage students with, getting real life skills, learning about ethical business, and learning about growing in the most ethical way possible. So really good, and also learning about that social ethos part. So we had some students who went and did some growing projects with local primary schools. Just created lots of opportunities, and it sort of almost snowballed into a really interesting project that had lots of scope to do lots of different things. So it was really good, and I'd recommend anyone to sort of give Claire a call, and they'd be more than willing to, and can talk you through sort of how the project engages students and how they work with students on it. But it's a very interesting project, and the other thing that was about it is it raised and changed the profile of the union, the institution, and local community. So the institution bought it, and they saw this project sort of delivering and developing employability skills, and it changed the image in the eye of the students. So it stopped becoming about bars and sport. But it's still great, and lots of students engage them, but it also had this other interesting project which students could get involved with, and it would engage the students who weren't interested in drinking or weren't interested in playing sport. It engaged the students who wanted to do other things, create lots of opportunities which have been life-changing. And that's another part of the 2034 vision, is that, we're looking at engaging students with life-changing opportunities which enable them to go off and do fantastic things. And the Chili Company has really achieved that, and it's enabling the students who have engaged with it to go off and do really interesting things after they graduated with us, because they can demonstrate that they've got those skills and they've done it in a real life setting with a really rare thing. I mean, who could say at 21 or whenever they finish their university degree at whatever age that they've been a director of a small social enterprise or what is a medium-sized social enterprise? So yeah, that's the challenge Chili Company, and we're now doing more things for social enterprise and engaging more students with different types of project. But that's just one way that you can embed social enterprise in your activities. That's one really good example of how I've done it.
Okay.
No way.
That's really helpful. When you explained that to me last year, I was like, makes sense now. Great. What we're going to do now is I've got 3 questions just to talk through with Tom. And while we're talking about those, if you have any other questions, because we've got about 15 minutes left of the webinar, if you, our participants, have any questions you want Tom or I to answer, then get thinking about those now and we will answer those in a moment. So the question I have, which I think is something that we really do need to talk about, is how we break down barriers that exist in unions, so that we make sure we're creating a culture where ideas are supported. Because I think there's lots of, that's a lovely idea, but we can't do that, or we do that, but we can't because the university won't let us, etc. Yeah. So can you talk us through, in your experience, some ideas for that?
Yeah, I think it's important to sort of firstly recognise that there's not one answer, and there's lots of things that you can do in your own context to sort of start creating and fostering that culture. So one thing that I think is really important, it needs to be a top-down, bottom-up approach. So everyone to be bought into being more enterprising. So that these and your SABs and your managers, all the way down to people who, student staff and that sort of thing. And doing that is as easy as starting up a big ideas session. So open up to everyone in your all-staff meeting ever and have a big ideas session. Encouraging people to come up with new ways of thinking. It doesn't necessarily have to be around enterprise initiatives. It could be around anything. And that's a great way of getting new ideas into your organisation and start encouraging people to think differently and think sort of new and research things and go off and do new things. So that's one really good way, and that's one good thing that we started doing at Gloucestershire, is that we encourage people to have ideas, and then they have that idea, we supported it and we tried and developed it, and no idea was sort of rubbish or anything like that. It was that culture or shift. But really, to be honest with you, that was really driven from trusty senior management level. But it's driven from that sort of level. People buy into it if you sell it in the right way. It's really important. And also valuing all new ideas was really important as well. There are other things that you can sort of implement, and that exercise that we did at Gloucestershire, where we listed all the things that we own or have, and then put a list against it and saying, does it benefit students to make money? That was really valuable in sort of developing the chili company, but that can work for other things that you can do. It's a really good exercise to do. So I recommend doing that, and you can do that in your locality as well. So you could do it as a rep and dem coordinator just as much as you could do it as a commercial services manager. List the things you have, with them, and try and analyse them and see if they're benefiting students in any way. Another thing that you can do, and we did it to staff and to students at Gloucestershire, was innovation sessions. So with students, we would take over lectures. So actually, things you've got to have quite a good relationship with academics and staff that you might engage in on a regular basis. So that needs to be something that you've got. But what we did is we went in and we took over a session that they tabled in, and we ran an innovation session. So we had an innovation matrix, and we ran sort of a lecture, and we looked at things that have, or things that annoy people, and we had to look at sort of solutions for them. And we run really good sessions, which I can send that all out to people if they want. But they're really good sessions, and you can also run those with staff, facilitate the conversation, and these matrices enable people to sort of start that innovative thinking. So that's really important as well. But I think the main way to break down barriers is just that top-down, bottom-up approach, and start getting people bought into it. But that's not something you can do. So say if people aren't buying into it, you can raise sort of initiatives which I do. So the big ideas sessions and the innovation matrices. I mean, you can go off and do that, and that's the beauty of working in a students' union. You often have the freedom to go off and do things that you want to do. So that would be my answer to that question. But like I said at the beginning, there's no one answer to doing that.
Okay, I'm going to ask you another question. Remember, if you as participants have something that you want to ask, then please ask, just in the chat. The next thing that I think is important to talk about is how, so unions already do loads of really good cultural stuff, and I think we should have a chat about how unions might adapt those so that they're following more student-led enterprise models, or that they are doing more in terms of social enterprise?
Yeah, I think there are some really good examples of what people are doing, but the main sort of headline thing that you can do is just change the language that you sort of market your services with. That can be one really good way of doing it. So, got point of sale in your commercial outlets or whatever, change it so it says all profits go back into sort of student activities. That's one really easy, quick win that you can do. If that's one thing that can take to students, that the money you spend in this union bar or the money you pay for your membership goes back into services. So that's one really good way, and that's a kind of a quick win. There's some good projects that are happening out there, which are good. So Grow Hampton, which is Hampton SU's Green project, is a really good example of how they've completely revamped a commercial service into an enterprise. So basically, what they do is they grow local produce on their campus. They sell it in a new cafe, and this is on NUS Connect at the moment. If you check that article, it's really interesting. And basically, they've taken 2 old shipping containers, they've read them, and they're in it, and they're selling all this local food, which is great. So it's 0 food miles, really, really visual. Also acts as a social space. So interacting in that social space with your friends as a student, you're buying the social enterprise, you're being exposed to social enterprise. So that's really, really visually good. Also, it's a project. Students are also growing the veg and that sort of stuff. They've done it at Leeds for a long time. They I can't remember what it's called, but they have a veg and herbs sort of social enterprise where they grow on campus and sell it. There's a lot of good growing projects, and how they can to social enterprise is quite interesting. But Grow Hampton's really good.
There's a lot of good growing stuff that come out of NUS's Student Eats project. So we include information about Student Eats as well, if that's interesting to people, because food's a really interesting place where you can really do some good stuff with social enterprise.
And another that you can start doing, and this is again facilitated by Green Impact, is looking at your procurement. So one of the sort of criteria is having an ethical procurement plan, and that really changes the way your union engages when it buys things and sources produce as well. So that's another important sort of basic thing that you can change. A lot of people will be practitioners who are in student activities, but that's a conversation you can have with whoever leads that in your particular union, your commercial team or your central services team. That's something that can be changed quite easily and work towards being a more socially focused union in that sort of way.
I suppose that's about the buy-in again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cool, good.
And all the arguments from students. So students are telling us on a regular basis through the GA survey that they want to learn about sustainability skills, and that ethical produce and that sort of stuff is really important to them. So there is a really good case of the facts that support the arguments to change your union and become more enterprise focused. So it's really important to back up with what you want to do with facts. And they're really, really good on Change SU about Generation Z and the future cohorts that are coming out of school stuff and are going to be joining our unions. I think we've got the first Generation Z cohort now, so they're all 18, and they really look at the world differently to Generation Y, much more ethically focused, to see ethical products. They want to learn about it as well. So it's only going to get more as we progress in the next few years as well. So that's a really good article. I'd recommend reading that as well.
Good. One more question. It's quite a biggie. So if we had to sum it up, why is civic engagement so important? Why do you think that social enterprises provides a good route for students to become socially aware citizens?
Yeah, it's the first part of it. I think it's a question that student unions need to ask themselves, and that is what are we trying to do? And I think is representing students, but also enabling them to be making a positive social impact is another core aim of ours. And I think about embracing that. So that's why I think civic engagement is and a good route. I think it offers lots of opportunities for students, sort of becoming socially aware. So in projects that like the Tree Company or Hallam's projects or Leeds or whatever, or Grow Hampton, it enables them to develop employability skills in the context of social enterprise. And I mean, enterprise isn't the answer, I don't think, but it enables those opportunities to develop employability skills and become sustainability literate and start thinking about their impact on society. That we need to do in terms of partnership with our institutions and looking at how to go forward with delivering student activities. But SocialNet has been proven, it changes the profile and raises it of students in their institution to the image and profile in the local community. So you can look at a lot of projects that have been happening and it's enabled more links to be made with different organisations outside of higher education. I think that's really important for delivering conscious students. But really important to stress that social enterprise is just part of the solution. It's not the only thing to do. But yeah, I think it's about looking at what student unions are and what we do. And I'd like to buy into the fact that I think we're to develop like-minded students who can make impact in society with us and when they leave us. I think.
Good. We talked about this one earlier as well.
Yeah.
I think you've given people plenty of reason to do this and why it's so important. If anyone has any questions, please write them down. We've got a few more minutes, but we're just going to talk to you now about things that you can do right now to get stuff started.
Yeah.
First thing?
So I think the first thing that you can do today is to go on to the JISCmail site and Student Enterprise JISCmail. We use that mainly to communicate things that are going on, but also want people to start using it to, like the JISCmails, and start asking people questions, sharing advice, sharing case studies, those sort of things. So that's something you can do. The second thing that we'd like people to do is to try and start raising knowledge across the sort of sector. So that's things like, I don't know, doing and reading about other social enterprises, but what we'd really like people to do is start writing briefings and things and start telling us about things that they're doing and then share it. That's something we'd really like to do, and you can either on the JISCmail or you can share it with Rosie and we can do that.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is really do it. So that we at Gloucestershire was just going and having a go and starting up a social enterprise and seeing what happened. There was no real strategy to what we were doing when we first started doing it. And we kind of learned from the way mistakes and learned from successes we had. But it was all about just taking the leap and doing things and setting projects up. I think unions can sometimes be slightly risk averse with the student activities and opportunities programs we deliver. So we might deliver sort of thinking about why we do it and fund it because we know it engages people. So sometimes we can be a little bit more reluctant to do something new that we've never done before. So I think it's about taking the plunge sometimes, at least trying something and starting small. So that the Chili Company, for example, started very small. It was a handful of students that started doing it, and it just gathered momentum as we went along and started developing it. So that would be a big piece of sort of advice, is sort of calling people to go and have a go and try things and then out about it.
Yeah. Okay. That's the end of what we wanted to talk to you about. So we've got 3 minutes if anybody has any questions for Tom based on his experience, or a question for me based on the stuff that NUS is doing here. If you enjoyed being part of this webinar, we do 2 webinars every week on a Thursday lunchtime. The purpose of these is to give you 45 minutes to an hour of thinking time about a particular topic. And that's when they're in lunchtime, so that the idea is that you can sit and have a bit of a break and do some thinking, which is nice. So the link to find out more about those is on there. We post them up on NUS Connect and events, so all the information is just as it would be if you were going to kind of an NUS conference or something. The thing on the screen is feedback. When you finish, when you close this webinar, you receive a little survey. It's really short. So can you let us know what was good and what you would improve in the future? That's really cool. And finally, as I said at the start, my NUS is around student opportunities, so enterprise does fall into my role. But Dan Francis, my colleague, is leading on our enterprise work. He's supporting Tom and the rest of the enterprise network. So if you have any specific questions about how we're doing stuff, why we're doing stuff, or get involved, if you want to be part of the network, then email Dan, and he will be the first person to answer questions, and then he may send it on to me or onto somebody else in the network. And it's just a flag. I've not put it on the screen because we don't have a date yet, but in June, early June, I believe, there's going to be an enterprise conference organised by the Enterprise Network.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell people a tiny bit more about that, what we know at the moment?
I think we know it's going to be at Loughborough, so they've kindly going to provide the venue, which is great, which is a central location, so hopefully people can come. It's going to be in the summer. We haven't confirmed the date yet. It's very likely to be in June, but we're still sort of planning it. But I think what is people to sort of email Dan and sort of know that you're either interested or if you'd like to be involved, let us know.
We would love some help with planning.
If we've got more input, we can make it a more relevant event. But I think what we'd like to do is at least start the conversations and start people thinking about things at that event, and start getting people networking and making connections and sharing practice, and also bringing in external organisations like Unlimited who and share their expertise. And Claire's saying she'd like to be involved. So drop down an email and let him know, or even better, send it on the GISC mail so we can start doing that. But I believe that will happen in June. We've confirmed with Loughborough, so they're going to be doing it. So that's great.
That's really exciting. Really cool.
Yeah.
If you have any further questions, we've got 1 more minute to answer any questions. If you've got questions or areas that you want us to into regarding this stuff, or to more information, pop down there too. And we'll have 1 more minute to write anything down that you want us to follow up with. I say thank you so much, Tom, for coming and doing us. It's been really interesting, really helpful to have you. And thank you all for participating. Thanks for sitting for an hour and taking an hour out of your very busy days to do this stuff. It's really helpful. We will email you all with the few bits that Tom and I flagged while we were talking. So bits of reading and places where you can go for more information. So look out for that email. I'm going to end now if nobody has any questions. So thanks.
Thanks.